We hear you, listeners, and we're trying to report the news, and a lot of people say we need to know information, and some people are saying, well, can we just talk about something
depressing.
happy? So Holly has a challenge to our texters, 57500. Text us what, Holly?
Your best good news story of the last couple of days,
And
right?
we will make it a segment.
We will.
Give us
Good
your
news
best
stories.
good news story of the last couple of days, and we will
Good
research
News
it.
Wednesday.
And because there is a lot of good news. There is a lot of good things. There are
most of our stories right now are depressing.
Right.
We know that.
They say that people enjoy the news when they're getting, they get
Information.
as much as possible. We're trying to give as much information about this case because I think there are a lot of questions about the death, about the defendant, and I can assure you that it will be old news in a day or two.
It still has legs, right? We know that. It's still being talked about. It's still an international story. But we did have this one texter. It's fascinating. The more we talk about this case, the more answers to questions we get, the more closures we can get. Keep up the great work, Greg. You're great.
There we go.
Thanks for that. Okay, so the story we need to talk about right now is that the U.S. State Department is denying visas to those who celebrate Charlie Kirk's death. So this is not talking about U.S. citizens at this point, but we're going to talk about U.S. citizens who have lost jobs over it. So Marco Rubio did confirm that the department will not issue visas to people who were, quote, celebrating the shooting death of Charlie Kirk.
Okay, so what they're saying is, I guess if you're applying for a visa, they're probably going to go through your social.
They've made that clear. They're going through your social.
Yeah, your social media, comments that you've made, that type of thing.
Yep.
And if you are celebrating the murder of Charlie Kirk, they're going to deny your visa. So, I mean, somebody's asked, is that a denial of your First Amendment right? I would say no. I mean, because first of all, you're not even in your comments.
There's a couple of questions. Yeah,
Right,
go ahead.
So I was going to say, what you say in your home country isn't necessarily protected. I don't know. I'm talking in circles here. By the First Amendment, we don't typically punish people for comments they make, but if they're inflammatory and it's discretionary whether you should be granted a visa. And I don't know to what level it's discretionary or it's a right. Maybe the State Department could.
There's no right to a visa.
Right. So, but maybe the State Department can put a greater level of scrutiny.
Yeah, for sure. For sure they do.
One.
For sure they do. But I have a couple of questions. So one of them, we already know that with increased scrutiny on immigration. I think I've been clear. I think the legal immigration system is broken. That needs reform as well. But they've already said, look, we're going to be scrutinizing your social media accounts. So, basically don't even apply if you've got stuff on there that's disparaging of the United States, disparaging of President Trump. Right now they're saying, if you celebrate the murder of Charlie Kirk. So anybody who is going to apply for a visa, they were already put on notice. Your social media is going to be scoured. And by the way, if you have no social media, that's also suspect because everybody has social media.
Because everybody's got social media.
Not my husband, but everybody. But here's my question is, what does celebrating look like? And I have seen some online posts that I would say are probably celebratory, but I've seen a lot that are not celebratory in my book that people are saying, well, that is celebrating the death of a public figure. And I don't see it that way, right? So being able to define what celebration means is something also.
Yeah, I was just thinking of some of the posts that I've seen have said, it's terrible what happened. But here are things he has said
direct quotes, right?
Direct quotes, and there's no excuse for what happened. But here's what the man has stood for, and I guess I don't know that I wouldn't call that a celebration, but the State Department might.
Right, that's right, and they have, and people have lost their jobs. So we're going to go into a conversation about the First Amendment. So Attorney General Pam Bondi warned during a podcast on Monday, today's Wednesday, on Monday, that the Trump administration will, quote, absolutely target you, go after you if you are targeting anyone with hate speech. And she has come under fire for that, actually.
Yeah, because they're saying, well, wait a minute, that is protected by the First Amendment.
Well, that's right. That's what people are saying. So first of all, even Charlie Kirk himself has said hate speech is speech, whether you call it that or not, right? People should have the right to speak their minds, and that's what he was doing. We know that, and there were people who say what Charlie was saying was hate speech. Anyway, one of the things that she said is that she had authority to investigate businesses that refused to print memorial vigil posters for Charlie Kirk, right? So if a business said for their own employees, you can't use business supplies to print a color poster for this Charlie Kirk protest. I mean, this Charlie Kirk memorial. People are saying that's crossing the line. That's crossing the line of what the government can do.
Right. And it is interesting. Yesterday on Maria Shaleo's show, she spoke with a First Amendment attorney and friend of mine, David Ryman, about how this is unfolding in the workplace. And it he's a First Amendment lawyer, but he reminded us what it says.
The First Amendment, it's a common misconception that the First Amendment prevents anybody from preventing you from saying what you want to say. It only applies to the government. So if you're a private employer, the First Amendment doesn't prevent you from regulating what your employees might say. A lot of people, most people really are what are called at-will employees, which means they can be fired for any reason or no reason at all. There are certain limits on what employers can do that are imposed by statute to an employee, and those, generally fall within anti-discrimination laws. So you can't be fired, for conduct or your status in certain protected classes. But in general, employers have the right to fire an employee for whatever reason they want, as long as you're an at-will employee, and social media speech can be one of those reasons.
So at-will applies to most of the employees in the state of Utah. If you have an employment contract or if you're a government employee, you have a certain merit position, you're maybe not quite an at-will employee. But what he's saying is, at-will means at-will. You're at the will of the employer.
That's right.
And they can terminate you for anything. So
or nothing.
Right. Right. And so if you post something, for example, as we're talking about here, where you say, I think something terrible about Charlie Kirk,
right,
or you're hailing his killer, his alleged killer, and your employer can fire you for that.
Right.
And that's not a violation of your First Amendment right, because you can still say it. You just can't say it and work here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that what you're saying is going to it's going to be taken down, or you can't post it. Post whatever you want, but don't post it if you want to work in my place. And that's what I think at will means as it relates to First Amendment and statements like we're talking about here.
So what do you make of this idea of Attorney General Pam Bondi saying we're going to go after everybody that is posting any kind of hate speech? We're going to go after companies. We're going to go after people. Is that a violation because she is the government?
Yeah, I guess it depends on what go after means. If what she's saying is, if let's say you're, widget company X, and you do government contracts and they don't like what you're saying, maybe they'll say, well, you're not going to get government contracts anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think there are limits on what the government can do. Right.
Yeah.
But I don't know that they can, prosecute you criminally or maybe even withdraw an ongoing contract unless there's some, bad faith provision in there or something. I'm just saying, when she's talking about we're going to target people involved in hate speech, she's got to be careful. But David Ryman did explain that free speech can have its consequences.
That is the bargain that we made in this country when we founded it, is that we agree to tolerate caustic and hurtful speech because we don't want the government telling us what we can and can't say. And we have to accept, as part of that bargain, the fact that people are sometimes going to say things that we disagree with and sometimes going to say things that are hurtful.
One thing I'll say about social media, and it's in my lifetime, it's new. It's not something we've always had, because people, and I don't know if I'll articulate this very well, but if you say something, you and I are talking, and I say something that you consider to be hateful, we consider that, whatever. But when you put it on social media, it's like you wrote it down. It's like you wrote a letter, and people don't realize that that's preserved. People think of texting as talking,
right,
and not writing a letter.
Right. But
your employer or the government looks at it as you wrote a letter. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it's there, it exists, and it stays there for a while.
Yeah.
I would just say, be careful what you post.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, that's always wise advice.